Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the September 4th, 2018 regular City Council meeting of Temple City to order. Madam Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez?
Here.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Here.
Councilmember Yu?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
Here.
Mayor Mann?
Here. And today for the invocation, we're pleased to have Mr. Jerry Jambazian, owner of Wonder Cleaners and Draperies, who will be providing the invocation. Wonder Cleaners and Draperies has been doing business in the city for over 60 years and is located at 9136 Las Tunas Drive. Everyone please rise for the invocation and please stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards.
Please join me in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we once again come before you asking for your guidance and wisdom for this council meeting tonight. We ask that you would guide and direct the decisions of Mayor Mann, Mayor Pro Tem Fish, and council members Chavez, Sternquist, and you. Thank you, Lord, for the great people like Joe Hine, culminating 42 years in business and carrying on the legacy of the Fitzjohn name as our first mayor in Temple City in 1960. Father, thank you for the girls softball team being here tonight as they're being honored. We also pray for safety for those who protect and serve us through the military, our sheriffs, and the firefighters. Father, we will never forget 9/11 and the tragedy that took over 3,000 lives 17 years ago. Lord, we are reminded to pray for our nation and those who make decisions at the federal level, where there seems to be so much bipartisan politics. Father, we just pray that you would just take care of that situation. We ask all of this in your name. Amen.
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 Thank you, Jerry. For the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to ask Mr. Franklin Rudell to lead us.
Before we start, I'd like to honor this great flag. Those of you who are here in regards, because of the privilege we have of having this type of meeting, John McCain, and the shirt that I have on, I wear on his honor as well. Let us start. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 5, ceremonial matters. We have two great presentations today. Tonight, first of all, we will be recognizing a business that has offered its services to the community for the past 75 years, Fitzjohn Jewelers. Joachim Hine and his wife Maria are the second owner of Fitzjohn Jewelers. They assumed the business in 1976 from Mr. Merrill Fitzjohn, who was Temple City's first mayor from 1960 to 1961. And he has kept the business's original name to this date. Mr. Hine will be closing his doors on September 8th. And we are very pleased and honored to have you here with us tonight, Mr. Hine. If I know you may not be prepared, but if I would like to offer you some time to address everyone, or would you like to say anything to everyone here tonight, or would you like to leave that for another time? Please come up to the podium. Please.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Joachim Hein, but everybody calls me Joe because the German pronunciation of Joachim, it's difficult. My wife Maria is with me tonight, and I purchased the store, like it was said, in 1976, and it was a Tuesday. I never forget the day. And Mr. Fitzjohn had instructed the sales ladies not to call any customers before I would take over on Tuesday, because he said, I want Joe to have a very busy first day.
Oh.
And he could have easily said, well, let's call everybody, I get the money before the takeover.
Oh.
So that's why I like to speak so highly over about Mr. Fitzjohn, who was actually like a second father to me. And the takeover was very smooth, and but he then had to move very shortly after my takeover to Arkansas. And he said, well, I cannot leave you without a watchmaker. So he said, I'm going to steal a watchmaker from another store and bring him to Tennessee. So that's how I started my business. And I told Mr. Fitzjohn that every single customer that will come to the store, I will treat them with the utter respect and courtesy. And he kind of smiled at me, but I think I did a good job, because the last few weeks have been just absolutely tremendous. People have called me, they have stopped by, they wanted photographs of us, and it was just a very, very touching. I never expected this, and then today that you honor us here, I appreciate it so much. Thank you all.
So I'd like to ask my fellow colleagues on City Council to join me in presenting the certificate of recognition to Fitzjohn Jewelers. And Joe, if you could please come up and we'll present the certificate, and I'm sure Jerry would like to get a few photos.
All this will find a special place in our home.
Yeah. Thank you.
Actually, before we move on to the next item, I just want to say a couple of things. Last week, I had the pleasure of speaking with Joe for, I think I took maybe half an hour of his time. And I remember Jerry telling me, if you ever walk into that store, you feel like you've been transported to a different time. And that's exactly how I felt. I mean, it was incredible. The store itself is like in some ways, it's like a museum. There's a certain legacy there. It's so iconic in its atmosphere. Like, you can feel the very soul of the business. I think, Joe, you told me some good stories about your times in that store, and how, you mentioned your parents' bakery, and when it was taken over by someone else, the bread tasted different, right? Because the soul of the person who had put their life's work into that business, it's just different. And I think even if someone was able to take over your business, everyone would probably have a different feel. Your customers supported you and was loyal to you for so long because of you. You are the business. You and your family are the business. And so I want to say I'm very honored to be able to speak with you personally, and I just want to thank Jerry for coming along. We were actually at a parking stakeholder meeting just across the street, so very saddened to hear that you will be closing, but as you said, you got to retire at some time and enjoy the fruits of your labor. And so I congratulate you and wish you the best in retirement, and thank you for maintaining such an iconic status in Temple City for so long. Thank you so much. Okay, and our second treat of tonight, we have the Temple City 12U All-Stars Girls Softball Team. Today, we will be recognizing the softball team, which competed in a district tournament and placed second. This tournament qualified the group of 13 girls to play the State Amateur Softball Association tournament in Lancaster. The girls placed within the top 7 teams of the state tournament and qualified for the regional tournament in San Diego. This tournament allowed the girls to be recognized as junior Olympic athletes. First, I'd like to recognize the entire coaching staff who I believe is present with us today. Head coach and manager, Rodrigo Gonzalez. Assistant coach, Andrew Valenzuela. Assistant coach, Armando Mercado. Assistant coach, George Reyes. And assistant coach, Joshua Kelly. I'd like to invite head coach Gonzalez to perhaps come up to the podium to maybe give some opening remarks, any comments, and please also introduce this great team.
Is this on?
Yes.
All right, thank you, councils, for allowing us to be here, to be recognized with these amazing group of girls, talented, athletic, academically, are astounding girls. These girls have been in this role for I don't even know how long. I've coached some of them since they were almost 8 or 9, and I've seen them turn into amazing women at this time. When we were at the tournament, it was over easily 95, 96 to 110 degrees. And these girls did not complain one bit. They represented the city, I believe, in the best way, going to school. Some of them were still in summer school. A lot of the parents had to carpool them to get here. I want to say my thank you to the parents that were, accessible to bring these girls at the time, because it's not an easy feat to go to San Diego, Lancaster, San Dimas, all over the place in the last minute of the day, and telling them that, hey, you guys qualified once again as a dominant force for Temple City to recognized in the south, in the southern district. Again, each one of you girls are going to grow up to be amazing softball players, but most importantly, women that have accomplished something that a lot of people can't say they have. So I'm thankful to be part of this, as well as my coaching staff. We didn't want to do it at first, but we would never regret ever taking it back. So I want to take this time to thank you once again for our last time together, because you guys are moving forward, but hopefully we're going to be recognized in time. So again, thank you once again for allowing us to be here.
So at this time, I'd like to have the council present certificates of recognition to each one of the players and as well as the coaching staff. So we'll be moving up to the podium. When your name is called, please come up and take a place up here in front of the dais, and we'll all get a group photo after we passed all the certificates out.
Sure.
All right, first up, Maya Gonzalez. Mariah Maldonado. Madison Kelly. Melanie Platten. Amaris Valenzuela. Alexis Castellanos. Gabriela Orui, Isabella Armenta, Isabella Reyes, Kayla Mercado, Kaylee Wan, Ella Lee, Layla Ramirez, but we'll save this for her. Oh, Layla. Oh, Ella's here? Okay. Oh, Ella's here. Okay. Okay. And of course, head coach Rodrigo Gonzalez. Okay. Assistant coach Andrew Valenzuela. Assistant coach Armando Mercado. Assistant coach George Reyes. Assistant coach Joshua Kelly. And we also have one for the entire Temple City 12U All-Stars girls softball team.
Okay. Hold the certificates. Hold your certificate. There you go. Smile a little bit.
One, two. Can I see the Temple City softball whips? Yeah, I just want to yeah. Can I have the 6U girls come up, please? All the 6U girls? Jordan, Paloma, Sienna. So these little girls also represented during All-Stars. They're the smallest ones we have. So girls, why don't you guys get with the big girls? Hold the certificate, somebody. Or behind them somewhere. Let's go. Let's get in the picture. Yes, I have my child. Kylie, get in there. I know you're going to do All-Stars, but get in there. I know you're going to make me pay for it later. Get in there.
Okay, all set? Look up here.
Oh, hold on. Hold on. Time out. Time out. Time out. Time out. Oh, you hold it.
Are you the team mom?
I'm not going to
You have a mom, you should be in there.
Ladies, 1, 2, 3. Look at all the cameras over there. The main one. Stay there. I get the picture. Sorry. We gotta make this perfect. Ready? Over here. 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you, ladies. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming.
That was awesome. They're darling.
Are
Oh,
you going down next week to Lee? Are you going to Lee check off on that?
so cute.
Oh, it's like the 30th. Are you going to the dinner? Are you going to your dinner?
There goes our crowd.
But yeah, I'm just going down for Thursday. Then.
Are you the voter?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very
Good luck.
much.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
When's the last day?
Hey, okay.
It is time to go get
Go get something in there. Maybe they have a discount.
Kristen. It'd be nice for you to go make a visit Fitzjohn, closing sale, get Kristen something cute. Right, Tom?
George, we have one for George.
Jane's got a revolving account.
It's
At,
Carl's
There's one for
Kells.
George.
Cal's.
They're missing one.
No, I saw the George.
Oh.
There is a George Reyes here. Is it?
Oh, there's one up there. You're like, wait a minute.
All right. That was very exciting. So we are going to move on to item number 6, public comments on items not listed on the agenda. I'd like to call Mr. Jason Oberlander.
Jason, why does this name sound familiar?
Good evening, City Council.
evening.
I'd like to thank you. I'm the president of Temple City ASA. I just recently became nominated president, so it's quite a task, as you guys well know, is what it takes to run a city. I'm running a little organization over here at the park. I really appreciate you guys honoring the 12U. They went to regionals, which is a really huge accomplishment for our little league. We are a smaller league. For them to do that is, like the coach said, it's a really huge accomplishment for us. We only have 103 girls, and they're competing against leagues that have 600 plus. So it's for them to do that. It's a really good recognition for our city. It brings other girls from other cities to our park to play too, to represent Temple City. So I'd like to thank you for nominating, recognizing them, and giving them an award. Also, there was a 6U team, as you well noticed. I didn't have time to get notice to you guys to get it put on the agenda for this month. 6U, we don't usually take an all-star team, and this year we did, and they did 2 tournaments. And the first tournament was very rough for them, but they learned very quick. And the second tournament, they placed second, which was in Hawthorne. So they rep for 6U division for the first time ever being an all-star team. And all the other leagues, they formed their all-star team with multiple teams. We formed our all-star team from our regular season team. We just took the 10 girls we had. And so for them to be able to come in second place, not being what I would call a truly formed all-star team from 3 or more teams, is also an accomplishment. So I was hoping maybe next meeting those girls could also get a certificate of
Absolutely.
recognition. Whenever we could do something
can
like
do
that.
Absolutely. So we'd love to have the 6U team, and sure our city clerk, Ms. Peggy Kuo, will get in touch with you. If you could leave your name, phone number, or whatever's best way to contact you,
Okay.
we'll have that arranged.
All right, I appreciate that, you guys, and thank you very much.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call Jeffrey Van, who I believe was one of the kids who just came back from Australia. So please come up, Jeffrey.
Good evening, Temple City City Council. On behalf of
Good evening.
Sister City and the 5 other Americans that got to go to Australia, thank you very much for your support and funding of this wonderful and unique program. We've gained so much knowledge and insight in the Australian way of life. And while over there, for that one wonderful month that we were over there, we've eaten tons of Australian food, seen sights that we won't ever forget. We also saw lots of Australian animals and even got to pet some. And finally, we forged friendships that will last for years to come. But your support means so much more than just the 6 of us. It is the crux of the Sister City mission, which is all about connecting human beings across the world. It is about transcending language and cultural barriers and embracing the customs, the icons, and the foods of other societies. And it is also about strengthening the ties between America and Australia through contact and bonds between people. So we are grateful that you allow all of this to be possible, and that we thank you again for keeping Sister City alive. Speaking about food, we brought some Tim Tams back from Australia. Fresh from the freezer. So I would like to now present them to everybody.
Thank you, Jeffrey. They're so good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you very much. These are my favorite. Oh, and they're cold. You can eat them all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
So-
Man, if you don't mind, I'd like to just say a real quick
Of course,
word.
please.
I can't get through this without letting you know that Jeffrey, I'll often referred to as George sometimes. That's kind of an inside joke, right, Jeff?
And they also call me Jeremy.
Jeremy, all right.
Jeremy.
I think we can all see from Jeffrey's words and how eloquent he was in speaking them that the program does a really good job, and we sent over a great group of kids this year, and I know they all had a great experience and shared it with us last week when they all came back. And just to let everybody know, we're going to have some Australians in town. Next week is when they come? 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. So if you see, well, I'm sure we'll have them here at the council meeting, but it'll be fun to have the 6 youth from Australia here. So thank you very much. You guys did a great job.
And I want you to know I already tried. It's delicious.
Sure do.
Thank you.
My favorite.
All right. Thank you, Jeffrey.
you.
And I just also want to thank Steve and Nancy Terry. Without your hard work and dedication to the Sister City program, it wouldn't be possible. So the ones behind the scenes is what made it all possible. All right, next up, I'd like to call Miss Lucy Liu.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, fellow council members and city staff. I am here on behalf of American Red Cross to remind everybody that September is National Preparedness Month. So if you haven't had a chance to get a kit, actually multiple kits, make a plan or stay informed, get more information on how to be prepared. I'd like to remind everybody that this is a great time to do so. By making kits, we talk about, the reason why I say multiple kits is, we talk about stay-at-home, shelter-at-home kit. We talk about a kit at your workplace, a kit in your car, a by-the-bed kit, a evacuation personal go kit. It sounds like a lot. That's why the earlier you get started, and every day just put a little bit of stuff in there, the better, the sooner you're prepared. Also making a plan, making sure that you sit down. Oh, going back to making a kit, making sure that every person in the family has a by-the-bed kit or a go kit, because if you ever get trapped in an emergency in the middle of the night, you can't get around, moms or dads or whatever, you can't get up and try to help the kids because timing is of the essence. You need to escape. Whether this is a fire or whether this is an earthquake, we do live in earthquake country, so please remember every person in the house should have a kit. Speaking of making a plan, you should review it twice a year. Every person in the household, unless they're a toddler or an infant, every person can be tasked to do something. This will help reduce some stress during a disaster because responsibility and work puts people, at ease sometimes. So make sure you make a plan for escape and go over with your family twice a year. rehearse it because practice makes perfect. You know, you build some muscle memory as well. And stay informed by getting either a solar-powered, hand-crank, battery-operated radio, weather radio, AM radio. You know, we have our great local station, KNX 1070, but honestly, I don't know if they'll still be able to operate in an event of a massive earthquake. But if you have a radio that can pick up on the weather channel, that should always be operational. So again, National Preparedness Month. Make sure you get kits, make a plan, and stay informed. Thank you very much. Oh, and I will come to remind everybody again, but at our neighborhood watch meeting, Area 9 will be coming up in 2 weeks. We do talk about disaster preparedness. So if you want to get a little bit more information, you can do that. Or in the meantime, go online to preparesocal.org, AmericanRedCross.org, FEMA. There are a lot of websites. You can even just Google disaster preparedness. Okay, thank you.
Oh, Lucy, where's the location of Area 9 meeting?
Area 9 meeting is to be determined. We are looking for a spot.
Okay.
Yeah, but it should be announced very soon.
Yeah, because I remember Rick mentioned that the previous location was not available.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, but it should be decided very soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy.
All right, next we have Peter Choi.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council staff. I'm Peter Choi, President of the Temple City Chamber of Commerce. In the spirit of recognizing FitzJohn Jewelers, I'm here to announce that the Temple City Chamber of Commerce is once again hosting our annual awards gala, our 94th annual awards gala. It will take place on Wednesday, October 10th. We are once again very delighted to be hosting in a restaurant here in Temple City, Lotus House Restaurant at Rosemead Boulevard, basically in the Kmart Office Depot Mall, right next to the new seafood buffet place. Lotus House Restaurant will be hosting there. Again, it's Wednesday, October 10th, and I'm delighted to announce this year's honorees. The Chamber Board of Directors voted for Outstanding Small Business. We'll be honoring Temple City Barbershop, right here on the corner. You like their work? Outstanding Business Beautiful, TAT Health Group, who took over that great building right across the street on Las Tunas. Outstanding Professional, Adam Chang of the KCKW Law Firm, Kudani and Chang Law Firm. They hosted our holiday party last year. They're down on Las Tunas, kind of next to the Sheriff's Station. And last but not least, our Outstanding Community Service Award is going to Donna Giorgino. And we're delighted to recognize someone who is such a great asset to this community and really defines what community service is about. So again, it's Wednesday, October 10th, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Lotus House Restaurant. Tickets are $50 before October 3rd, $60 after. Again, your ticket is your raffle ticket for a host of prizes. So come on down and enjoy a delicious bowl of oxtail pho noodles and a super dessert to take home. Again, thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Peter. Next, I'd like to call Mr. Franklin Rudell.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say thank you for the evening, the privilege of being here and being able to do the flag salute and the whole thing. I was a shopper at FitzJohn's before he took over. My time goes back that far. I would like also to promote, we've thought of this idea before, but we didn't succeed with it. The idea of trying to preserve some of the ionicism of the city of the past, and maybe even some of the homes, and we had homeowners object to it and everything. But could it be done at the time when the people are leaving and we take charge then as opposed to now? Maybe you don't quite understand the idea, but it would be a little bit different timing, and it would be the next person taking over's issue and not the person leaving issue. Something, does anybody at the table understand what I'm saying?
No.
A while back, we gave thought to trying to honor homes who were old in the city. And we went out and took a survey of all the old homes. And some of them were in the city and some of them weren't. And we had a great deal of discussion with property owners who said no. and the property owners won.
Who's we?
Huh?
Who's we? We did? Or you said we went
Well,
out?
we, meaning the whole community. I'm sorry.
But who? You said we went out and talked?
We, the city took and put together an inventory of old homes throughout the area.
Okay.
And maybe some businesses too. I don't remember the exact. But we know that we had Winchell's here at one time. Now we have Fitzjohn, and I'm just naming two of them. But there may be some others, and if we could take them, consider them afterwards instead of during, like we did then, it might be able to do it in a little different fashion. And be able to remember these businesses and not have it just die as the donut place did and a few other places did. Just an ordering thing, just a suggestion. It may fall on deaf ears, but I just thought I'd
Right,
say
Glenn,
it.
I'm not sure I understand. Are you looking, what you're exactly looking?
My goal
To
would be
do.
that we do remember the past.
Okay.
That's my goal, because if you don't remember the past, you will repeat it.
Right, but I mean, like, for example, in this case where Fitzjohn is closing. So you mean like somehow memorialize that
That's
through
what I'm getting at. That would be a start, yes.
picture or
Because it's now
something?
at its end, rather than, before we were doing it more like the beginning. I mean, we were doing it more in the middle of an ownership, because there was quite a few people who were trying to sell, and they said, well, this will mess up my sale. I remember that was part of the discussion. And so we ended up dropping it because of those things. I said, maybe there's a different ordering policy that we could use and be able to keep some of the anionicism, as the mayor said, and have it preserved for the future. It may take some brainier people to me to put that into words of a ordinance, but it's just something to think, because I think Temple City has something to offer.
Right, and I
Right.
think what Franklin's referring to, that William and
This is before Mr. Mann's
yeah,
time.
right, that we did have, gosh, it was a historical preservation.
Right.
Series of meetings.
Right.
And people came out and expressed their, either they were in favor or not in favor of having some type of historical preservation. And, I mean, the Mills Act came up numerous times, and the community at large decided that they didn't want to have their homes on a list for whatever personal reasons. And so I think that, Peggy, maybe you know even more, there was some booklet or some type of reference guide that we have, at least that we know. They even listed the houses by dates and the businesses. So that probably is somewhere in City Hall. Maybe it would be nice to take it out, but I know at the time, the community was.
At the time it died, and I just thought, I've been thinking lately that there might be a way to recognize businesses as individual entities on an ongoing basis, as opposed to a particular time and space, and do that as a moving thing. And that way, looking back over a 20-year period, we'd have, or 30, or whatever the period is, we would have a group of them. But we wouldn't have done it all at once as we were trying to do it before. That's the thought behind what I'm trying to say.
So Frank, if this is a complex subject, so perhaps Brian and I will follow up with you.
You can talk about it, and if you want more thoughts, I can maybe bring up some more, but
Yeah, we'll talk to you outside of the meeting.
I've said what I wanted to say, and then,
2013.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll find the information you're referring to. I know
Thank
Cindy.
you, Peggy.
Yeah,
it's
Yeah,
something
I
that
realize
we
it was
found
before your time, Mr. Mann, I understand that.
Yeah.
It was just the idea, and it tied into what Joe's leaving, and of course, my own personal thought that I had traded with Fitzjohn a long time ago, being class of '59, when I was in high school and whatnot, so.
All right, sure. We'll,
Okay, anyway.
I'll follow up with you
Okay,
afterwards.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the council at this moment? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment and we will move on to the consent calendar. Is there any items on the consent calendar that council would like pulled for discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item C, League
Item
of
C.
California Cities Annual Conference Resolution.
Okay, so we will pull item C. May I have a motion for the remaining items?
Motion to approve the rest of them.
I'll second.
All right, motion second. Madam City Clerk, could we have a roll call for that motion?
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
Yes.
Mayor Mann?
Yes. All right, so item C, Councilmember Yu, would you like to maybe
Yeah, the
start us
reason
off?
I want to pull this item is just the recommendation is for the delegate from the city to vote at his discretion. And our delegate is Councilmember Chavez. And I really trust Councilmember Chavez's discretion, but I felt that had I been the delegate, I would have feel a little bit more comfortable if the council actually have discussed the item, because in the past I voted, and most of us have at one time or another voted as the delegate. But, I think having some discussion at council would have helped the delegate feeling more comfortable. And that's the way I saw it, so I want to kind of discuss this item a little bit. I mean, personally, the two resolutions, personally, I support them, but I want to bring that up for discussion.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess, is there anyone from council that'd like to discuss sort of your take on the resolutions that are on item C? Maybe Councilmember Chavez, you being the delegate.
I had, in looking over them, I had no problem in supporting both of them, so
Okay,
that's probably the way I was going to vote.
Yeah.
all right. Councilmember Sternquist,
Same.
same. Mayor Pro Tem Fish,
Yes, I agree.
you agree?
Yeah,
Okay,
I felt the same way, but I just stopped bringing it up
okay, sure.
for discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I also agree with the rest of my council colleagues. But thank you for bringing it up, and I think it's appropriate to at least have some minimal level of acknowledgement of what we are going to vote on. So,
Right. So, I guess, Mr. Mayor, I'll move to that we, on this item, that we, I guess, delegate the voting of the, voting for the two resolutions to our delegate council member Chavez.
okay, we have a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Second. All right, moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, could we have a roll call for that motion?
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
Yes.
Mayor Mann?
Yes. So that's been approved unanimously. Moving on to item 8, public hearing, we have none. Item 9, unfinished business, we have the discussion on our city commission. We have a presentation by
Our
Mr.
city
Cook.
clerk, actually.
Oh, okay, Ms. Peggy Kuo.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. The item before you tonight is a continuation of discussion regarding the city's commissions. Per council's direction, staff has provided in the staff report some additional background information on city's commissioners. Currently, the city has 3 commissions with 5 commissioner seats each. The commissioners serve a term of 2 years with no term limit and no gap between each term. The city's longest-serving commissioner served a total of 34 years on the Parks and Recreation Commission. The longest term of current commissioner serving is 12 years. In the past 10 years, there has been 16 commissioners that have resigned for personal reasons or moved out of the city, for which commissioners was elected city council. 6 did not reapply for personal reasons or they moved out of the city, and 4 that reapplied but were not reappointed. Provided in the staff report also is a summary of information regarding surrounding cities' commissions and commissioner terms. Tonight, council is requested to continue the discussion regarding the number of commissioner seats for city commissions and to provide staff with further direction. This concludes my report, and I'm available to answer any of council's questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kuo. Are there any questions for staff at this moment? All right, seeing none, I would like to open up the public comment for this item. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment, and we move on to council discussion. Perhaps Councilmember Chavez, do you have any additional thoughts?
Peggy, were you able to get a hold of any of the commissioners? I know we had talked about that earlier, to attend tonight's meeting. I know
No,
we have one here. Look out in the audience, the only one we have. You weren't able to get
I
hold?
didn't call them, but they
All
were
right.
emailed the agenda for tonight's discussion item.
Well, as you may recall, this, the reason we kind of brought this to the council's attention, I mean, we, council member, you and I, who served on the last ad hoc meeting to basically go through the applications and make recommendations to the council. And there were a couple of things I think that caught our eye out of that whole experience. And of course, Vince can certainly add whatever he feels appropriate. One was the low number of applicants that we had. We had, of course, the returning, or those who, I guess for want of a better term, the incumbent commissioners, although they are not really incumbents because they're reappointed after their term is over. But there weren't very many applicants to fill those positions. And also there were a few comments that were made during those interviews where some of the applicants stated that had they known that they were going to compete against an incumbent commissioner, that maybe they would have thought twice about putting in an application because they didn't want to take necessarily their position away from them, I guess. Saying that, however, the applicants that we did have, they were very, very qualified and very enthusiastic. And so after the process, and if you recall, our recommendation was to reappoint the commissioners who were currently sitting to their positions or continue with their positions. Vince and I thought, well, you know, is there something better we can do as far as the selection process, as far as the, how we go about appointing our commissioners? And so a couple of things that we had talked about, and one of the reasons that we brought this up, and if you recall the last discussion we had, was perhaps look at, one, the number of commissioners on a particular commission. As you know, they're all they're all the same. There's 5 on each group. And we were kind of toying around with the idea of increasing the number, which would of course be one way to put on additional people who are interested in serving on those commissions. The more thought I gave to that, however, I started thinking as well that's sort of like a Band-Aid effect, because yeah, we can put 2 more on, but that really doesn't solve necessarily the problem, because we're going to still have people that are going to be coming back and they're doing a good job. No reason to return or to remove them for someone else. So, and that's why I asked staff to put together some information as to what other cities may do and what works for them. And I want to thank staff, of course, for compiling this information. It's very, very thorough as far as a lot of the cities around us, Arcadia, Monrovia, and there are a lot of similarities. There are some differences, of course. But then the more thought I get to it, and this is something that maybe council might also want to consider, is perhaps thinking about a term limit. I've said in the past that to me it doesn't make much sense that council members have term limits, but our commissioners do not. It doesn't, it's funny, I was looking at the names. I remember Jerry Seibert being on the planning commission when I first got on council. He didn't realize he had been there for 26 years. And I don't even know who Al Adams is. Do you remember who Al Adams is? Had been on that was 64 to 98, 34 years on the Parks and Recreation Commission. I don't know the answer. I don't know if it's, putting in term limits, extending the amount of people we have. I do know, though, that I don't know how long we can continue turning people down who are very qualified, people who are very enthusiastic, and rely only on whether or not an incumbent chooses to step down or chooses to leave to allow an opening to arise. And that's why I'm thinking, I know some of the cities in our surrounding area do have term limits. For example, Arcadia they serve actually a 4-year term, and they can serve 2 terms. I don't know whether or not staff was able to also determine on the term limit, was that a lifetime, or do they sit out a term and then they can come back? I don't know if you were able to get any of that information or not, but regardless, we could do what we want to do. Did you have that information?
Yes.
So, for example, Arcadia says term limit, 4-year term, 2 terms. What happens after?
They sit out for 2 years and then they can reapply. But if they are applying for a different commission than the one they previously served, there is no lapse. There is no sitting out period.
Yeah, so they can do 8 years on, for example, planning, and then do 8 years on Parks and Rec without any lapse in time. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Again, it's just something that, again, in my mind was born from the fact that, we have these people out there who really want to be involved. I guess the argument can be made that there are other things they can get involved in, but at some point in time, it's sort of, to me, a progression. And I think we've all been there where we do the things in the community, we do the Little Leagues, we do, the community festival, then we move on to a commission, and then many of us move on from the commission to the city council, and that seems to be a natural progression, not only in our city, but many cities. But, it's at this point, given the makeup of how we choose our commissioners, there seems to be a drop-off there, and I would just like to see something that will be able to hold the interests of these people, and give them the idea that, okay, there's going to be 2 openings, and we're going to pick 2 people out of this. And another thing that comes to my mind too is, and again, I don't know that necessarily the ad hoc committee process is the greatest process either. I think that, again, depending on the amount of applications we have, and in looking at the list that staff prepared, usually the entire council will review those, maybe at a special meeting. I remember when I was selected for the Parks and Recreation Commission, we just all came to be interviewed in front of the council. And in fact, we did it in open, right here. It was right in the meeting. So I don't know, I think, and because, you get to the point, at least I felt with the ad hoc, after interviewing these people and hearing their enthusiasm and their qualifications, it's for me to say, well, I'm sorry, but I cannot recommend you. I just feel that should be a decision made by the entire council rather than maybe an ad hoc committee.
So you alluded to term limits. Do you have a suggestion in mind?
Well, my suggestion would be similar to what we have, and that is 4 terms. I know we serve 2-year terms, so I think a fair would be 4 terms, 4 consecutive terms would be the max that one could actually serve. That would give them, if they want to, 8 years on a commission. Again, where that number comes from, in looking at the list, it seems that a lot of them are 8 years or so, but again, I'm not married to that entirely, but something in there,
All right.
What's fair, I have no idea.
So, all right, thank you. Councilmember, do you have anything you'd like to add since you were also part of the ad hoc?
Yeah, at the time, the thought, at least we discussed amongst ourselves, is that if we increase the number, there is a greater pull there natural attrition. If you have a larger pool, be more turnover. Naturally, people move out of town, change jobs, or run for city council. There's larger pool, then there's more of a tendency to have a bigger turnover. We haven't had our citizen academy for quite some time, and as you remember, every year after the Citizens Academy, there's a resurgence of interest in city affairs, in interest in running for commissions. So, I think that it will really come down to either a term limit system, so we encourage some form of turnover, or a larger pool. And as you can see from some of the other cities, there are some with 7 and some with 5. But interestingly, we're the only city that seems to have the fewest. We're the one city that has the fewest number of commissioners. We already have, right? So I think it's a good thing, even for small cities, to have a lot of citizens involved in their city affairs. So.
Although, in fairness to us, I think, although some cities will refer to them as commissions, like, for example, Arcadia has a senior citizens commission where we have a senior citizen advisory committee, and we have a youth committee. So they basically work like commissions, but for some reason we don't give them that title. So, I think we still cover a wider range of things. But you're right, they've actually lifted those up to the commission status.
Yeah. Well, I think the difference between commission and advisory committee is that a commission can independently make a decision as an extension of the city council without necessarily our final appeal. So I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I'm sure they have a little bit more power.
A little bit more power. The commission are basically extensions of the city council.
Okay. All right. And do you have a take on whether you want to impose term limits, or you're still of the opinion that we should add 2 more?
Or actually, there's another third, which is add more and term limit as well. That way you can encourage even more turnovers. So, but if we were to have term limits, I'll be with the Councilmember Chavez, like something like 6 to 8 years maximum.
2-year terms.
Yeah, because you really want to preserve a lot of the knowledge, the gain. There's indeed like the Planning Commission, or even the public safety, parks, they all come with their own sets of rules and considerations. So we want people to stay on at least for enough years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes, my thoughts haven't changed from the last meeting. I suggested that possibly we keep the commissions the way they are as far as the number of members, and go to some type of, term limits. I'm comfortable with what Councilmember Chavez suggested. But listening to Councilmember Chavez mention that, some of the other cities have gone or use commissions instead of committees. I definitely think that that's a positive way to build membership in your cities, and call them, commissions. I know for a fact, because I attended Rosemead's last city council meeting when Bill Alarcon was retiring, and their beautification committee is going to become a commission after they've had it for quite a number of years. And that was their rationale, was to let the people that have come in and out of the committees who are really interested in it become a commission. I know that we call our youth group a youth committee, but other cities call their youth committees youth commissions. And I kind of like that, actually. Letting them feel, empowered. Our youth, they're part of a youth commission. So I'm good with either keeping the amount of members the way it is and either opening up our current committees to become commissions. Either way is fine with me, but I think there's ways to engage the public beyond our committees and our commissions anyway. If you really have a desire to be involved, you're going to be involved whether or not you have a title to be a commissioner or a committee member. So, and we offer so many opportunities. I know that we've done that for years to try and engage our whole community. So that's my thoughts. I haven't really changed much from what we did at the last meeting. I'm looking at the staff report. Thank you for that. I know it was a lot of work, and I'm still at the same place I was last time, but thank you for that.
Councilmember Strang, I just want to make sure. So no increase in numbers,
No increase in numbers.
but perhaps term limits.
But perhaps term limits, and maybe looking at our senior committee and our youth committee to become commissions
Although that's probably for another day, though.
another day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
Well, I'd have to say I also have not changed my opinion. I would like to keep it at 5. I think if we do it to 7, we will just become the same thing. We'll still be turning people away. Term limits, I don't have a problem with term limits. 8 years, I don't know, maybe 12. I'd have to talk about it. I do like having senior commissioners. I do like that they have the experience of being on a commission for a number of years, and they know the history behind the commission, and I think it takes sometimes 8 years to get that experience. I also do like the idea of having more commissions. I think that's a great idea. I've always kind of was confused about why sometimes they were commissions and sometimes they were committees, and then dissolving them and then starting them again and then having people reapply, and it just seems like a lot of work just to be able to have a commission, especially if they're going to report back to us all the time. I definitely think we need to have a senior commission. I mean, that's something that I think is not going to go away. It's going to continue. We've already done the senior master plan. So that would be something I would like to see happen very soon. So that's what I want.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
All right, so there's been a lot of ideas thrown out here. And I think if I was listening carefully, the one part where we have more towards consensus is the idea of term limits. I think it seems like I don't think there's a lot of agreement on increasing the number of members. I like the
one
yeah,
quick
sure, go
question. Peggy, you had mentioned that we have one commissioner that's currently on 12 years, I believe you said, but in looking at the list, O'Leary looks like the oldest, but he was appointed in 2008. So wouldn't that be 10 years?
He was on Parks and Rec before.
Are you counting, well, yeah, but he was on Parks and Rec longer than 2 years.
He was just reappointed to 2020, so I counted 2020 minus 2008.
Oh, so you counted his future?
Current
Oh.
appointment.
his current term.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. Sorry.
Unless he was on.
I was saying, wait a minute. But he's actually been on a commission, because I think he went straight from
He did.
Parks and Rec to planning.
Yeah.
And I know he was on Parks and Rec. Well, let's see, I was on for 6 years. He was on there, what, a year or two before I got on there? So he's getting up in a 20-year plan.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. The only reason I mentioned it is because in the direction you were going, and there was a mention about term limits and the time, it seems like, other than, O'Leary's kind of the exception. All the rest seem to all be within 6 to 8 years at the most. And that's a lot. I mean, most of them are actually couple years.
This
4.
commission, though, is somewhat unique in the sense that they had retirees who actually moved out of
yeah,
Temple
yeah.
City, or they would have stayed on the commissions
Yeah.
on planning.
For some reason, historically, at least as long as I've been involved, it seems like the planning commissioners are around longer than other commissioners. Except for a few exceptions, like yourself. You were on Parks and Rec for many years, but for some reason, I don't know, maybe, who was it that mentioned, I think it was Vince, that expertise that they need in the
It's-
planning
it's
maybe helps.
challenging.
And gets them to that point where they really can add a lot to it. Although, if you look at our list, we've got some who are relatively new appointees to the planning, Serge and Helen and Jeffrey Lee, and they all seem to doing well, even without that experience, so.
Yeah, so I guess for me, it's still a tough sell on, the tougher sell for me is increasing the number of commissioners. I think, a meeting goes long enough with 5 people. Imagine 7, 9, 11. So there's sort of like a pragmatic aspect to getting business done in a timely manner. Most of our commissioners are, well, not, I shouldn't say most or all, but a lot of our commissioners have work, family, other lives, and to have 7, you would naturally expect those meetings to be longer, the deliberation to be longer. So I'm not completely sold on that. Term limits, I think I'm more open to that idea, although, Mayor Pro Tem brings up an excellent point about expertise. And especially on the Planning Commission, it seems that expertise really comes into play.
Although, let me tell you something, the applicants that we got for the Planning Commission already had that expertise from what they did for a living. So it's not like we're taking somebody who is a, I don't want to offend anybody. How should I say it? Someone who is not an expert in planning.
A novice.
Yeah, okay, a novice, usually isn't applying for that position. At least that's not what I see. It's the people who are applying know that,
Usually have some
okay,
background.
it's good to have some kind of background. So we're not getting, it's not like we're getting complete novices to come into the planning commission. So, yeah, you're right, it does help, but that's not what I've seen as far as the applications, at least the last few go-arounds, so.
Yeah, to me, it just seems like, there's a lot of areas where we could use additional volunteers' help that are outside of the commission level. I don't want to pull Miss Lucy Liu into this discussion because she's not here, but to me, that she's the person I think of as someone who's not a commissioner, but in some ways may contribute just as much, perhaps even more, than the commissions do. And she does it because she's passionate about certain subjects. When I see the Neighborhood Watch area leaders, those are folks who, they're not commissioners, but they contribute an incredible amount of time to meeting with the deputies monthly and working out the program and making the program what it is today.
It's funny that you say that because today I happened to be at Burger King and I saw Martin from the Neighborhood Watch. We all know Martin. And I was there with a friend and I introduced him and she said, "Oh, I think I know you. You're a commissioner for Temple City." And he put his shoulders up and his head back and he goes, "Oh no, I'm bigger than a commissioner. I'm in charge of the whole Neighborhood Watch program. And I thought, good for you, Martin. You know, he said it jokingly, but his body language was like, I'm really important. And so you don't have to be a commissioner to feel like you're contributing a lot to the city. And today, it just made me laugh when you mentioned that, because he was the perfect example who just, he's applied for commissions numerous times. He never got to be a commissioner, but it didn't stop him. Now he's the president of the Neighborhood Watch and the sheriff's organ group there, right, Ed? So it didn't stop him. I mean, he's continued to be engaged.
And I hear what you're saying, and I think it's a good argument and has a lot of validity, other than the fact that, at least based on this last go-around, these people who were applying have been doing that stuff. They've been involved. And it's to the point where, okay, I've done that, I've been doing that for years, I'm ready to move on. But there's no position for them. It's not like we're saying, don't do that. And I think Vince and I know all of us up here have told people and applicants, look, we appreciate what you've been doing before, and we urge you to keep doing it. We don't want to lose these people, but at some point, I think we may, because, you know, I think it's human nature to move up. And contrary to what Martin said, moving up from, let's say, the Neighborhood Watch program to a commissioner position is kind of a step up, I think. But maybe he doesn't feel that way.
Well, you know, and, I'm just going to throw this out there. It's interesting, in the city of Claremont, their election is coming up in November, and they have, I believe it's 4 commissioners challenging the 2 or 3 incumbents.
Well, and traditionally, that's where a lot of the people who run do come from commissions. I mean,
That's what we did.
Look, that's what we all did, pretty much. And that's the way local politics generally works. But
there was a vacancy when I applied.
yeah, there was.
I didn't run against it.
May I just use this opportunity to ask our Mr. City Attorney maybe a couple questions, just for clarification purposes. Number one is that are there any statutory requirements or certain things that needs to be decided by planning commissions? And secondly, the second question is the difference between commissioners, or commission and a committee. Are there any kind of a legal definition?
Yes to both of those questions. The Planning Commission is a unique commission among all of the other city commissions because it is the only commission that you currently have that has obligations under state law that the council has delegated to handle at their own discretion. Obviously, things can be appealed, but the Planning Commission can take action of its own volition and discretion on items, and that might never come to the city council. Conditional use permit approvals and things like that. Commissions, to answer your second question, are generally in municipal law bodies that exercise the council's authority on behalf of the council. If you think of the city council as having the supreme legislative authority in the city, it has all of the duties. It doesn't have to have any commissions or committees. It can do everything itself. But it delegates authority down to commissions to actually exercise some of those duties and authorities. And so when you're saying, I want to make something a commission, you're saying the council is going to take some of its powers on a certain topic area and delegate those down to the commission. Typically, a committee is more like a study group. It's a group that you want to have look at issues, to debate issues that are important to the community, but not take independent action. You want them to provide recommendations back up to either the council or the planning commission or whoever the relevant committee is. And then, of course, you have your standing and ad hoc committees of the council, which are just a little different and outside of what you're talking about here. Did that explain you?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
But don't all our commissions have some authority to make decisions that will stand unless someone does appeal?
Yes, because you've delegated them. For example,
Because you kind of mentioned the planning commission different from the other two, but to me, I think I don't know that any of them are actually different.
The planning commission is different because it has parts of the planning and zoning law that specifically require certain items to go to the planning commission.
Oh, I see, okay.
As
Parks-
opposed to a parks
Parks.
commission.
Okay,
Correct,
all right.
correct. Like general plan amendments and zone
I
changes
see,
have
all
to
right.
go to a planning
Right,
commission.
right, right. Okay.
I think is it your Parks Commission has independent authority with regard to tree removals? It can
Yeah.
act on those.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there are some of your commissions you have delegated authority to, but that's not a matter of state law like the Planning Commission.
I mean, because all the commissions have the same qualifications. There's no unique qualification for serving on planning commission that would be different from Parks and Rec. You simply have to be a voter in the city and live here.
There's no qualifications
There's no
under the law
specific-
unless you decide to set some. Some committees have an architectural review board, and you need to have some kind of architectural or landscaping type of license to be on those boards. But that's a matter of discretion for the council.
So I think a really important point that was brought up is I think Mayor Pro Tem Fish alluded to forming more commissions, such as ones from our existing committees that Councilmember Sternquist mentioned. And perhaps there are other areas that we haven't really thought about, looked into, or discussed, where there are opportunities to create commissions that, serve a very particular purpose. I don't, at least in the time that Mayor Pro Tem and I have been on council, I don't recall that discussion ever taking place. But I don't think that's a discussion for tonight. That's probably something we can bring back on an agenda at a later time. I'm hearing that there is some interest from council to look into that. Having heard all of council's discussion, like I mentioned before, I am open to the idea of term limits. Not so keen or sold on the idea of increasing members on the commissions.
Here, man, I have a question for our city attorney as well. I'm assuming that if we were to make a decision on the term limits, that would be would that require some type of?
We'd need to do an
action?
ordinance amendment. You can have a general term limit requirement that would be applied to all of your committees and commissions, or you could have different ones. For example, if you thought that the Planning Commission required a longer term in order to gain the experience, you could have a term limit specific for that commission, and you could have a term limit for each commission that was different if you wanted to. Or you can have one that applies to all.
So
But yes, we would have to put that in the ordinance.
On that note, I actually want to gauge Councilmember Yu's take on that, since you were on the Planning Commission. Would you be opposed to having different term limits for different commissions, or?
Well, I actually have mixed feelings about term limits because I think typically the commissioners are appointed by the city council. The city council has term limits, and I think the natural, logical conclusion would be a city council changeover as we turn over, the commission will turn over too. And some cities in particular, the cities with, they have districts, which we don't, thank goodness. Each council member will appoint one commissioner for that district. So I actually am not much of a person, I'm not in favor of a term limit. I feel that the experience, while a lot of people do come with some experience on planning, but planning issues and land use issues, like we've seen in the recent general plan amendment, those are fairly complex issues, and unless you really practice planning, and most of us don't, I like to see more seasoned, like you said, senior folks stay on. If we would have term limits, I would like to see them on more than 8, at least 8.
So maybe if I could offer a suggestion for council is, since our opinions are very diverse here on this issue, perhaps, if I may suggest, we bring this up in a later context and perhaps focus more on what we can do to create commissions from committees or identify areas where we can form. I mean, we're not limited to just forming commissions. We can form advisory bodies if they're more appropriate for the subject matter that's being discussed. Perhaps that's something we can ask staff to look into. I know one's been brought up is we know we formed the Senior Master Plan Advisory Committee where.
But didn't we say there's going to be like 11 members on that?
Yes.
So what happened to the argument about keeping everybody at 5?
Well,
So now we're going to have a commission with 11,
right.
but we're not going to
And I
increase the
thought-
others.
And I thought that the reason for advisory committee is that we allow people that don't necessarily live in the city, but work in this area to be part. So that's another way.
Exactly,
Why
it cuts it off.
it differ from a commission, because it doesn't have to be in the.
Doesn't have to be a
Well,
resident.
Again, I think we're going a little far from the agenda item tonight.
Yes.
That, I'm not prepared to discuss turning committees into commissions tonight.
Right, that would be for a later,
That's
that would be a
that's
separate
somewhere
issue.
down the road.
Yeah.
I think we still have at hand, though, what we're going to do with our current commissions. Doesn't matter what we're going to have future commissions or not, but, I really think there is a need for some type of limits to have some turnover, to allow those who want to be on commissions, have run the gamut of being involved in every standing committee, volunteer organization, whatever, and are ready to step up to a commission, because regardless of what people think about it, the commissions are right below the council. We have delegated a lot of important things to them. I think most people, those that certainly sit on the commissions, believe that they are working together with the city council specifically on those things that they were appointed to do.
Okay.
So,
All right, so
you know.
maybe, all right, term limits. I know you mentioned 8 years, but I've heard from both Mayor Pro Tem Fish and Councilmember Yu that they feel that term should be a little bit longer for the issues we've
well,
already
that Vince
discussed.
said 8 years. Did you
I
say?
said minimum 8, it
Minimum
could
eight?
be longer, yeah.
I think
But then
8
again,
years
it-
works. And the reason I say 8 years I think works is because in looking at the numbers, that would fit into where most of our commissioners would still. And then Eric, I don't know. I know when we did with the council, when we extended the term limits, it applied prospectively. I would assume that this would be the same way, or is that something that we can decide on our own? Or because I know under the law with the council, it had to be that way.
Correct. Since it's not an elected office, it's an appointed position that you're appointing. You have the ability to decide whether it's going to apply to people who are currently appointed or whether it's clean slate and you're only going to apply it going forward.
To me, we haven't talked about that issue. I would be in favor of the clean slate. I would want to take, for example, a commissioner who's already been on there for 6 years and say, oh, by the way, you only got 2 more years to go. That's the way I feel. That if we're going to give term limits, then it would apply to everybody moving forward from
Okay.
there.
All right, then, Councilmember Chavez, I think you've gone through a number of things that we discussed. Perhaps you'd like to form that into a motion for council to
Well, I don't know if
vote
we're
on?
prepared. Does anybody else want to?
Is there, I mean, I think right now where we stand is it seems like there's talk of an 8-year term. I don't think everyone
Well,
may not necessarily.
I think the purpose to create some kind of turnover and allow new blood, if you will, to come into I would start maybe, if not to the current, maybe at the next term or something, starting, so.
What do you mean by at the next
Applying,
term?
if we were gonna have term limits, I would say it should apply to current people. That's
Oh,
my
yeah,
opinion.
I
saying
think
not
I'd
a
like to
clean
think
slate.
about that one for a while, about whether or not to apply it now or,
Well, let's say, so what you're saying is, for example, someone who was first appointed in 2015, if we were to institute term limits, and let's say it was to be 4 2-year terms, that's 8 years, that 3 years is going to count against those 8. That, is that what you're saying?
That's what you were saying.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what you're
But what
saying.
I'm saying is that if they happen to pass the 8-year, I don't know if there is one that passed.
Yeah,
8
there's
years,
only,
then we don't tell them, well, please leave tomorrow. No, I'm not
Well, they
allow
have
them
to
to
follow
serve,
their-
well,
finish what they were
according to
in
the
term.
list we have 1,
Only
2,
one, right, I think?
3, I think we have like 4, at least 4 commissioners that would basically be termed out now, based on 8 years.
Right, but my point is that allow them to serve, to finish the current term. Even though they already passed the 8-year mark.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
That's my point. But but somebody who's had like 2 terms gets to serve 2 more. Okay.
Okay, so
Is there a motion?
this is very interesting because
I have a question. Do we need 2 motions, one for the amount of members and then one for the term limits?
I think it'll depend on whether we're applying different limits to different commissions.
I think the argument on the, are you saying the, to add members to the current?
Right.
I think that's pretty much fallen by the wayside.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
so
not-
that
I don't
one we're
think
going to
I'm
stay.
Yeah.
going with that anymore.
Right, okay.
Unless you are, I don't know.
I am, but I think I'm the minority, and then plus the mayor has a good point. Sometimes you really don't want people to go to 11, 12. Efficiency on the council, workforce staff is definitely are valid, very valid considerations. So yeah, I'll be, I mean, even though I'm somewhat favor of that, I'm willing to just see it remain at 5 as well.
All right, because, I mean, if we're not going to have a motion to consider for council, then the only option really is to table this for further discussion, which, unless there's a specific direction to get more information for staff, we're not really going to have additional things to really deliberate upon.
Do we even need a motion if we're not going to do anything?
No, we don't.
No.
You
Yeah,
just
we
let
don't.
it go, right?
Yeah. So,
Well,
so
I'm
that's.
prepared to make a motion, it's just that I'm not, this new wrinkle about how we're going to apply it to existing
Okay.
commissioners, I have a little bit of, heartburn about. I don't want to, those who have, we have at least 3 or 4 commissioners who basically, by instituting a term limit that applied retroactively, would give them a year or 2 at the most, and then they would be done.
Okay. Well, perhaps.
That I don't know if I'm prepared to do.
Well, I know Councilmember Sternquist, you mentioned you don't feel prepared to discuss that specific issue at this time,
I
or
mean,
do you
I
have
think I'd
a?
like to think about that a little bit more, and I think we've gone on a long time with this one
Yeah.
issue.
All right, then.
So table for some
Then
future
I'd say
date.
we table it, and I will discuss with our city manager, Brian Cook, to find an appropriate time to bring this back for further discussion.
Mayor, just a suggestion before you close this out. The council's done a very good job of kind of narrowing the issues so far. You're not looking at more commissions tonight. You'll bring that back at some later time. You've already decided that you're not interested in expanding the commissions beyond 5, for at least the ones that you have. There does appear to be some support for some type of limit, term limit. You just don't know what that limit should be and whether it should apply prospectively or retrospectively, or so it does seem like you could have a motion with some direction to staff to look at and bring back to you options for term limits for your commissioners.
Okay.
If, so you could, somebody could make a motion to say, look, we want term limits, we want staff to investigate that and bring back some options. If you table it, you might just, you know how
Okay.
table things go.
That's fair.
And you have done a good job of narrowing the issues.
And thanks for making us feel productive.
Very
We appreciate that. So how does council feel about Eric's
I'll
suggestion?
make that motion.
Okay.
Perfect. I'll
So-
second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded quickly. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call on the motion as suggested by Mr. City Attorney?
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
Yes.
Mayor Mann?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Vale.
My pleasure.
So to be continued. And I also want to thank staff for putting all this information together. I know it's a lot of numbers and a lot of data, a lot of research to ask for our neighboring cities. So thank you very much. All right, so we move on to new business. We have none. Next, we have an update from our city manager.
Mayor Mann, members of the council, we're going to have a very productive and busy September and October. We do have one council meeting before our Moon Festival that we're partnering with World Journal on September 22nd and 23rd. We have some booths. We're going to be partnering with our nonprofit communities members and have a lot of activity. We're going to expect a lot of people, a lot of booths, but it should be very exciting. And then in October, too, we're going to have a lot of events, including, and just a little clarification on one event, in October, we will be having our Fall Festival, which will be combined with a car show. So staff is working on a car show as well, combined with our Fall Festival with our school district. So we just closed out our concerts in the park and are heading into our fall events going forward. Staff also too will be, and we will be at the JPIA conference as well. It's probably, I would say, it's one of the more productive conferences in terms of education for both the council and for staff. No registration cost as well, which keeps things very low. So that's why we kind of push staff to go to that event. And I find it as one of the more productive conferences that we attend as well. At the League, Councilmember Chavez and I will be there. One of the items you just voted on tonight is there is again a concern that the state is kind of whittling away at local control. Through the years, since about 2000, the cities banded together to make sure that local taxation issues stayed local. The state of California has tried over the years to whittle away that power. There are constitutional protections now that that'll prevent the state from coming in and swooping in and taking our funds. Along those lines, this November you're going to see a record number of revenue measures hit the ballot across the county, a trend that we'll be seeing going forward. So, with all the challenges a lot of cities around us have on pension costs and everything else, and we've discussed those quite extensively as well, and the ability of us as a contract city to do a better job. We're not immune from those costs impacting us, and so we'll be keeping track of those measures as well. Next council meeting, we will be bringing you the closeout of the fiscal year 17-18. Our new Administrative Services Director, Susan Paragos, will be here, and our auditors will be here in October, ready to review the books and give us what, as consistently we've had for the last several years, a clean bill of health financially in terms of our operations and our procedures. So always places to improve, always places to do better, the council and the community can have a lot of confidence in the fact of how we're spending our money and we're doing it properly, and our procedures and our processes are strong and will continue to improve. That's it for this evening, Mayor.
Great, thank you.
Ryan, is that a quarterly report we get, right?
Yeah, we do. Unlike some other cities, it was new to me when I first started. We actually do a quarterly update. Susan is actually going to kind of look a little bit more forward on quarterly reports as well, so because some of that is looking back, looking backwards. We're going to try to do a little bit of more projections going forward as well. A tweak she's going to propose. She's going to present not on this quarterly report, but future quarterly reports.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. So next we have an update from our city attorney.
Mayor and Council, I do have something to discuss with you tonight. It doesn't require any action on your part. I try to bring things that have some possible community interest, might be out of the ordinary, aren't just dry cases and things to talk about. I want to mention to you tonight single-use plastic straws. You'll all remember the big debate that went on a long time about plastic bags at the grocery store. And before there was a state law that generally prohibited grocery stores from using plastic bags unless you paid for them, there were a number of cities throughout California who adopted their own ordinance prohibiting plastic bags. Well, now the same thing's happening with what are called single-use plastic straws. For about the last 2 years, a number of cities have adopted prohibitions of one type or another with regard to restaurants providing single-use plastic straws to their customers. Some cities have banned not only full-service restaurants, but any type of food service place, including fast foods. Some have limited even to grocery stores on whether they can sell individual straws that have to be packaged in certain ways. Well, there has been a bill moving through the state. It's called Assembly Bill 1884 by Assemblymember Calderon, having to do with single-use plastic straws. It has passed both the Assembly and the Senate. It was provided to the governor for signature on August 28th. As of today, the governor hadn't signed it and haven't looked to see if he's going to sign it. But if he does, then starting in January of 2019, full-service restaurants will be prohibited from providing single-use plastic straws, both defined terms in the law, to customers unless they request them. Kind of like when we go on extreme drought, water rationing, and the restaurants don't give you a glass of water unless you ask for it. If this law passes, that'll be the same thing. I'm going to give you your beverage. It can have some other kind of straw. It just can't have a single-use plastic straw unless you ask for it. A single-use plastic straw is something that is made from either a petroleum or biologically based polymer, such as corn and other plant material. Although you can have, and the restaurants can give you, a non-plastic straw that is made out of either paper, pasta, sugar, wood, bamboo, or some other thing. Now, when I was on vacation, of course, doing research for this very presentation I'm giving you, they all used paper straws.
Right. That's like the old days. Yeah.
They last for about 30 seconds and then they disintegrate in your drink, although I guess they're better for the environment since they're all being made out of recycled paper. So I'll bring this to your attention, one, because it may have an impact on restaurants in town. To my knowledge, the community and the councils were never interested in doing a plastic bag ordinance. My assumption is that you're not also interested in doing a plastic straw ordinance, but this is another one of those wonderful oddities that's working our way through our system.
No.
Apparently, plastic straws get stuck in the gills and mouths of certain marine animals and also certain other types of wildlife like birds and tortoises.
Is this already being done in Santa Barbara?
Yeah, there's maybe half dozen to a dozen cities who have already adopted prohibitions
Wow.
against it.
So unlike the plastic bag, isn't that a complete prohibition?
Not at a state level, no, not a complete
See, to
prohibition.
me, this is another example of the state legislature doing something and wasting time on something that's already being done. Because most restaurants that I go into, they will ask you if you want a straw. They're not giving, they rarely bring out a straw. So I think,
No.
for the most part, that's what restaurants are doing anyway. Plus, frankly, it's a cost savings for them too. They don't have to buy straws.
Right, but that law only applies to full service.
Correct.
restaurants.
Correct.
So when I go to get
sit
boba, I'm still getting my
Yeah.
boba from my.
That's
Yes.
exactly right.
What
A
is
full-
McDonald's is full service?
That's
No,
important.
it doesn't apply to any
more
fast
fast food
foods where
use
you
it,
would
but-
actually use the plastic
Well,
straw.
I think that's where most straws are used at fast food places.
That's
Yeah.
one of the humorous parts about this. A full-service restaurant is a restaurant at which you have to be guided to your seat and that they bring you the food and beverages. It's so like if you go to Hometown Buffet or any of the other buffet-style restaurants, that's not included either. You can have straws there. It doesn't include any drive-throughs. So to only a very small group of restaurants, which at least in my experience, don't provide you straws anyway.
Okay.
Thank you for
That
sharing.
concludes my
that.
report today. Thank you.
That was very interesting. All right, so moving on to council reports on ad hoc or standing committee meetings. Do we have any reports? Sorry.
I just have a couple of comments. Are we going to be having a Las Tunas Downtown Revitalization Standing Committee anytime in the near future?
Yes. We will be bringing that back, and I will be scheduling a meeting with both you and Councilmember Yu.
Okay. And I mentioned last time, perhaps talking with the school district about having a standing committee meeting with them as well, which has been quite a long time since we've had one. My only concern, and I understand the argument that well, they're going to be going through an election soon, and we don't know where they're going to be or stand. But my problem with that is that okay, I understand life goes on and things happen, but to me that's not a reason why we can't continue what we've already been doing, and that is regularly meet with whomever is there. And I know that the argument is going to be from them, and because it's been that way in the past, is that once we get past October, that's when their holiday season starts, and they can't do anything during the holiday season. And so all of a sudden, we're now into 2019 again. And that will be almost a year then since we've had a standing committee meeting with the school district. I, for one, would like to at least find out, what is going on. And since, I don't know, what's it been, 6 months since we last met? It's been a long time.
They haven't reached out.
And I know that they have some new people in charge over there. It would be nice to maybe put a face to a name. So even if we have one thing on the agenda, at least, we're reaching out to them and we're saying, hey, we're still here. Are you guys? And what can we do to, keep that dialogue going with whatever group is in power over there? So
We'll look towards a meeting for October, before
I mean,
the holiday.
if they say no, we can't do it, then fine, but at least it's not for want of us trying, so. And I know we have a city fee, are we having the city fee ad hoc meeting this week?
Thursday.
This Thursday. Do you have that on your calendar? Yeah, it's this Thursday at 3 o'clock, I believe.
I have
So I gotta make sure we're still having that.
SCAG transportation on Thursday.
Okay, so are we rescheduling that?
Can you?
Sorry, I can't do that. Find some related apps on the App Store.
That's a scary practice.
Yeah, it just comes on.
They come alive on their own.
Because I know.
Can
I
we
think
do
it's
3:30? What time is it scheduled for? 3?
It's scheduled at 3 o'clock.
If we can do 3:30, I can be back by 3:30.
Okay,
Is that okay,
That's
Tom?
fine with me.
Okay.
sounds good.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, so we move on to council items separate from the regular agenda. We have, starting with Councilmember Yu.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next we have Councilmember Sternquist.
I have a few things. Well, one's a question. I was wondering where we are with progress in looking into the use of the chamber site.
Sure. In November, you will have an item come to you for the current lease agreement at the current site, which expires at the end of this year. At the same time, what we've done is we've had David Goodell take a look at this building and has come up with some ideas and thoughts about how this could actually be configured at a low cost, low impact type of suggestion. So at that same time, we will bring both the renewal of the lease going month to month with the chamber for their existing site at their existing site, and some concepts of how it could potentially work, bringing the chamber here.
And how about what could be some ideas at the actual site?
There'll be some discussion items on that as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's
Yes.
continuing to move along.
Yep.
I don't know if you'd like to give the library update? Okay, so we had the opportunity to meet with Louise Griffin, who is the artist that both the city and the county agreed would be the person to use. And she came out to City Hall. She brought some samples of what she has envisioned for the library. And it's really exciting. So I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Because they're
but-
going to see it next meeting.
Because, yes, you're going to see it at the next meeting, but I'm just so thrilled that all of you will be able to see it, and it's quite unique, and it will be throughout the whole library, which is pretty awesome. So I think it's going to be really fun for you to take a look at that.
Looking forward to it.
There was a positive bird found in our neighboring city of Arcadia that had the West Nile virus, which is, for me, it's pretty scary because that's a block or two away from us. And so they found a dead bird.
What kind of bird was it?
Usually they're crows.
The crow, I was gonna say, was it a crow?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it had the West Nile virus.
I've
So
noticed more crows in our area, it seems like
Have
to
you?
me. They were gone for a while, but I guess because West Nile killed them all, but now they're coming back.
And so just a reminder to not have any standing water. And it's just amazing. We had a presentation at the Mosquito and Vector Control that in one drop of water, you can have thousands of mosquito larvae in it to then hatch. The new director, he's been here about a year, Jared, he surprisingly is married to another director of the Greater LA County Mosquito and Vector Control District. And his wife and Jared were at a Foothill Transit event that was done by a city council member in Claremont who hosted just all the people that he serves on with various boards. And he had a summer gathering. And at the gathering, I had the opportunity to sit with both Jared and his wife. And one of the guests asked them both, said, do you see, like the mosquito problem, like getting better anytime soon? And they both said, absolutely not. In 5 to 10 years, the projection is we will be just like Florida, which is horrible. And I think sometimes here, it gets worse, and then it just depends on the weather. When it's very hot, of course, chances are that they're going to come out, and people are watering more of their plants, and there's a lot more standing water. But we really have to take it seriously. And to the extent that now the Mosquito and Vector Control District now has a liaison at COG to work with stormwater issues. Because what happens is, for example, at our high school, when we got a lot of free rain barrels from the water districts, those were happening in all the water districts. They weren't developed to keep mosquitoes out, the netting on the bottoms, because they only need like a millimeter to get through. So people weren't working together to try and solve the issue to stop mosquitoes from being prolific in the area. And the stormwater people were trying to just find ways to capture water. So basically, one organization was working against the other. So now we're working together whenever there's some type of water, say some type of water issue, whether it's in the sewers or what have you, that's going to try and trap the water, that there's going to be more coordination between the two organizations to try and alleviate the problem of mosquitoes becoming even worse than they are. Some of the cities have ordinances about not just the green pools that are around, but actually people who have tires in their front yards, and the water stays in the rims. And as I was driving here this evening, We have a house on, I believe it's Woodruff, that has like 7 tires as a decoration, and then they have plants growing up from the tires, but all those tire rims contain water, and the water doesn't drain. So those are just habitats for mosquitoes to thrive. So it's little things like that that different cities have actually tried to implement in ordinances to prevent mosquitoes from, continuing.
Yeah,
When do we know that we have a mosquito problem? Do people say, hey, I'm getting bit up all the time? Because I don't, no one ever comes to me and says that, hey, there's all these mosquitoes in my backyard. And also, is anybody working on eradicating the mosquitoes? Or, we know it's a problem, but I can't believe that we would ever reach a point where there's never going to be some standing water, especially you've said before,
It's
a little
drops.
drop.
It's drops.
You're always going to have that, I
Right.
would think. So,
Well, I don't think we're ever going to eliminate it, but what the goal is to make people aware, because if there's some people who might have little
lessen
drops,
the
let's just be
obvious,
reasonable.
lessen the opportunity.
Right.
When was it? I remember years ago, didn't they have remember that everybody got all hot and bothered about they were spraying? Airplanes were dropping.
Oh, yeah.
Was it,
yeah.
what was that?
Fruit fly, malathion.
Malathion.
Yeah, first fly,
But that, everybody just came unglued. Short of that, is there any scientists working on, how to get rid of mosquitoes, or?
Well, believe it or not, just like we go to different conferences, they go to different county health conferences and workshops to help mitigate the mosquitoes, since they're not going to be able to
Right.
get rid of them.
But I have a question for you. You mentioned about rain barrels, because I just finished work on my house, right? Rain barrel could be one of the things that's required for submittal as part of your plan check. But I always don't like rain barrels. That's why I don't have rain barrels in my house. But you brought a very good point. Are we still, as a city, requiring people to put in either some kind of low impact development and yes, putting in rain barrels would satisfy that requirement? If rain barrels are no good, then maybe we should look at, or if we do require them, look at a certain kind of rain barrel that won't cause mosquito problems.
Right.
Maybe it's time for us to be more proactive and get in some type of plan or ordinance, because I know even in our own parks, we water our grass, but invariably there's a pool of water somewhere.
Yeah.
Sitting, especially on the baseball field.
Right.
In the dugout, in the bullpen, there's always a bunch of water just sitting there.
At our first meeting that we had the director come to, which was a month ago, he gave, he said, I hate to bring bad news, but his whole report was pretty much bad news for all the city's reps that were there. And he shared that what's so difficult for enforcement from even the mosquito and vector control district with green pools and spas is every city in the San Gabriel Valley either had no ordinance or each city had a different ordinance. But yet mosquitoes don't stay in one city. They can fly quite a distance. So I had suggested to the whole group, why don't we have each city bring to one of the COG meetings to share with the vector control at when they can get to it, their ordinances. If they have any ordinance at all that has to do with the mitigation of mosquitoes and what it is. And then what the mosquito and vector control district is going to do with their scientists that they have, and they do have scientists at the place in Irwindale where we have our meetings, actually look at the plans and find a plan that seems to make the most sense for all the cities, and then hopefully bringing this back to individual cities in the COG and having each city have that ordinance. And it would just make things so much easier for the vector control with implementation and citing people who, because right now it's all on them. If you have a neighbor who has a green pool or a spa that's just filled with a little bit of water or a pond, and you're not keeping that clean, then you're harvesting mosquitoes. And your neighbor's not going to be too happy about it, but the only way to enforce that is by this long, lengthy process about, trying to get them to do it initially, and then if they don't do it the first time, giving a second notice, and then the third notice, you issue them a fine, and then the fines aren't paid, so it's never ending. So I just, I've learned so much about these pesky mosquitoes and, the different, there's just so many different types of mosquitoes, Aedes, and all these different ones. So anyway, just try and be conscientious. That's all I can say. And try and not contribute to the problem. It's not going to go away, but hopefully in the San Gabriel Valley, we're working to at least be as diligent as we can. So that with the mosquitoes, library project. And then one last thing, on Saturday I went to, or Sunday, to LA County City Days, and Catherine Barger hosted it for the San Gabriel Valley, her San Gabriel Valley cities in the 5th District. And it was not well attended. I think a lot of people were out of town for...
Well, and another thing is that I got the invitation like 3 days before the event.
I did too, and actually when
Like, what is this?
shared that, I said, I got an email that basically said,
Yeah.
you haven't responded to the invitation.
Right, which I
And-
never got the invitation.
And I said, well, I never got the invitation.
Exactly.
So I think there was, and they acknowledged that there was some mix-up within their office, and
It was a good deal. They had free tickets.
yeah, it was parking like right close by, and then you got 2 tickets, and you got to go, and they had a nice reception. But anyway, I went and told them everybody, didn't get an invitation, and some people had plans out of town, and they understood.
It's a
but
tough weekend to have something like that.
It is. But now just to go give Foothill Transit a plug. Foothill Transit has very inexpensive trips to the LA County Fair, and guess what? They drop you off like right at the entrance. You can't beat that. And I think it's $1.25 for a ride to the LA County Fair. So anyway, if you want to go out to the fair, try Foothill Transit. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez?
Just really 2 quick things. I just want to acknowledge and remind everyone we had a great time at the how do you pronounce it? Hualien County MOU signing ceremony. We all attended. It was an interesting event. And Jerry, you were even there, Jerry. It's been so long, I forget. But yeah, but it was a good event, and thank you for them for their hospitality. Also, just real quick, Lucy brought up something. She always reminding us about disaster preparedness and the neighborhood watch. I'm wondering if maybe next year, or maybe we should start having vendors maybe come and sell preparedness kits at these meetings, maybe, because I mean, we're always talking about how you need to get this put together, and if most people are like me, oh yeah, I'm going to do it, and then you never get around to doing it. But at this neighborhood watch, we talk about it, and I'm sure there's some vendors that would love to maybe come and offer discounts on kits and things that people could actually purchase. I don't know if there's any legality issues there or something to work out, but maybe, it seemed like a good pairing of things, or maybe the city could sponsor as part of that neighborhood watch, kind of step it up a little bit and say, okay, we're going to offer some kits, and at least to get people started on it.
Tom, I think the Red Cross has kits that you can purchase, because when Nan and I went for CPR training years ago, they had small little kits that they gave all the participants.
And I know Lucy, I think, does talk about the Red Cross, and maybe we could have Red Cross come to
That would be
a
nice.
meeting or something. We have a captive crowd, and if you figure every month if we get 80 to 100 people, that's 1,000 people a year
a good
that
idea.
we're going to have kits to, and I think that would be a good marriage. So maybe you can look into that or see if there's something possible doing that. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fish.
Just a couple of things. Just wanted to thank the Taiwanese for that wonderful event, also for coming to City Hall for our tour. That was very, very nice. We were very fortunate to have their police chief and all of their department heads and lots of wonderful people, and so it was very, very good. And then, of course, the event on Saturday was great. And one thing I wanted to bring up, and I think we should probably talk about it again, is, we have all seen and heard about the wonderful report from our sheriff's department about our decrease in our burglaries. So I want to give a shout out to our sheriff's department. I think they're doing a great job. But I wanted to talk about possibly instituting the ring discount program again, if we want to do that. It's been brought up several times at the sheriff's meeting and also at other meetings. I thought we were going to discuss it at some point, but it's never come about, and I keep forgetting to mention it. So,
Next meeting.
oh, okay, thank you.
And not only that, but there's got to be other companies out there.
There has to be.
That are doing the same thing. And maybe we need to be a little bit more competitive and see what's out there. I mean, Ring is great, and I have it, and
I have it too.
It's a good program, but there may be other things available out there. I think doing our due diligence as a city might.
And I have had residents ask me if we're going to bring that program
Right.
back.
The only-
So I'd like to talk about it.
The only thing I wonder, Tom, is if you have a different company, right now, all the Ring people can talk to one another about what they've just seen. I don't know if you bring in another company, if it would
Well, I
coordinate
don't
with
know that
it.
they would be
Yeah.
compatible with. And I'll be honest with you, that thing drives me nuts.
Does it, you can,
Oh,
you know,
my
you
God.
can change the setting.
Well, you get these notices from people, somebody walked up to my door today and knocked on it, and it's like,
Well, I
okay.
turned that off.
You can change that.
I turned
Yeah,
turned that part off.
I'm looking there and I get 10 messages there, but,
Yeah.
it's not a perfect program.
No.
But for the price,
You know
and I
what?
think it's a good program.
Jerry got his at
Yeah.
Costco, right,
Yeah,
Jerry?
well, you can buy them separately, there's no question.
What I like too is it's getting our
They're not
neighbors to
cheap,
talk
though.
to each other.
Yes, that's
And I think we've always been trying to do that, just to get them to talk to each other, that something's happening in their neighborhood, that there was a suspicious vehicle. I know I've seen pictures of people stealing packages and cars and all kinds of stuff. So I think that's another great addition to the Ring, is that it keeps people contacted. That's it.
Well, if I can just pick about and actually ask the Mr. City Manager, does the sheriff department look at the rain report? Because pretty scary. I mean, some of them show like masked robbers coming. Like there were one that showed 3 guys at night hopping and looking at people's garage. It's really scary.
Well, the way I think it would be probably used by the sheriff is if there's an investigation.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be considered a piece of evidence that they could use
Yeah.
as part of that investigation. But, it's currently not against the law to walk up and knock on someone's door, but obviously that person commits a crime and you have a picture of them doing that.
Yeah,
That's
but-
pretty good
but-
evidence.
But
But
still scary in the middle of the
It
night.
is
They
scary.
walk up
It is
and
really
just
scary.
try to look into your house. So
yeah.
I hope they're looking into those. So
Actually, I'll have an answer for you later this week.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Fish. Yeah, I had a couple of things. I'm glad you brought up the Ring program, so I don't need to talk about that. I'm gonna scratch that off. I do want to again thank the entire delegation from Hualien, Taiwan for,
It's great.
or I guess what I learned during the Taiwan ceremony is that some people are sensitive to the term Taiwan. They were referring to it as the Republic of China, so
Yeah.
I should know better, actually, since my mom is from Taiwan. But anyway, it was we really appreciate them coming to visit us. They did give the city some gifts. I actually forgot to ask Brian to perhaps bring that jade sort
Oh,
of
yeah, it's beautiful.
figurine. Perhaps next weekend we can bring that to share with everyone in the audience as well as everyone who's watching. I know it's up in City Hall, but it's not exactly a spot that everyone's going to be looking for. So it was a very nice gift. For those of you who weren't here, we did give them a nice digital reprint of the gazebo out right here in Temple City Park, and I think they greatly appreciated that gift as well. So it's a first step. A lot of work remains to be done, especially at the local level, at the volunteers level. We saw Jeffrey from the Australia Sister City group report back to us how much that benefited him. And we also knew how much work Steve and Nancy Terry put into that program. So we kind of need the equivalent of Steve and Nancy Terry on that side to really make that happen. But I think what's great is we already have a template for success.
Yes.
So it's a matter of finding the people, the resources, and the time to try to replicate that. There's going to be different challenges, so I don't have this sort of pie in the sky thing that's going to be all smooth. But I am hopeful moving forward, and I think we as a city should stay on top of it and see how it develops and help them wherever help is needed. So, and I want to thank all my fellow council members for being in attendance. I thought that was a great show of unity and solidarity. And certainly I've never been to something like that before, so it's quite
Neither have we.
quite the ceremony. Let's
it
just
was.
put it that way.
And you can find the pictures of the ceremony on templecityphotos.com
And the video.
and the video.
And yes, thank you, Jerry, for capturing all those moments. And
I think it's seen a lot in Taiwan, actually.
oh, is that right? Okay.
Did some research, and a lot of people are looking at
Ah,
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
Wonderful.
So for those of you who are listening, Jerry's mentioned that he's gotten a lot of hits from folks who are possibly watching it overseas. So
Wonderful.
okay. And I also want to mention, so last Friday we had a stakeholder meeting to provide to our business owners about the recent parking study that our consultant Transpo did. And then the Friday before that, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, I joined staff to pass out flyers to let our business owners know that this was happening. And the outcome was sort of what we expected. We didn't get the turnout that we hoped for. It was at Rendezvous Cafe on Las Tunas. And what was interesting was we probably got more feedback from actually passing out the flyers and talking to them. Because they figured,
Going
well,
to
you're
them,
right here in front of
right.
me. I might as well tell you what's on my mind. And that's what a lot of the businesses did. And so I know staff is putting together a summary of those points. I thought it was interesting to at least share with council what some of the business owners told us directly. Certain things are a little different than what the parking study might show, but we have to kind of be wary about anecdotal evidence versus an actual scientific engineering study. So there's always the nuance there. We can't really say, one's more valid than the other or vice versa. But I'm looking forward to the discussion because I thought there were a lot of interesting points that were brought up. Transpo, I think, did an amazing job from their presentation and the studies that they've done. I'm not going to go too much into it, but Rawad from Transpo was excellent. He, what I appreciate about Transpo was they didn't just take some sort of broad template for parking and try to shove us in that box. They actually tried to tailor it and customize it to the specific area that we were studying in.
Great.
They also, as part of that study, they did some direct outreach to people who were dining at a restaurant, shopping in the downtown corridor as they were walking out. They tried to ask them like a quick
This is a
questions.
report that was done?
This was part of the downtown parking study that staff
Are we
was.
gonna get that at any time in the future?
It's a draft report at this point. So that draft report is being finalized, and the draft report will be presented to the council.
Yeah.
The draft report from staff or from Transpo?
From Transpo.
So, but it sounds like, to me, like they already had a report that you guys rely upon and.
So there's some draft findings so far.
Yeah, part of the, maybe to shed a bit more light, I think part of the overall presentation from staff is going to try to take the stuff that Transpo did but also consider the feedback that was received during the stakeholder meetings. So it's not completely just a technical report. There's going to be other nuances that are weighed in for council to consider.
It's something to consider in the future, I think, is I did obviously something similar when I was the mayor last, and it's my experience and that it's better for you to go to them than for them to come to you. And the reason for that, at least my thinking, is that they have a business to run.
Right.
And they would rather stay at their business and work, especially if it's in the middle of the day. They're more than happy to talk to you if you go to them. And as you probably experienced, very outspoken and happy to do so. But to get them, and we've been doing that for a long time. You remember with Chamber tried to do that. We tried to have meetings here at City Hall, and it never really was a good turnout. And I think there's just a flaw, I think, in that type of thinking that they're going to come to us. I think they're busy, they're running their own businesses, and more than happy to talk, but usually on their terms. And so whatever we can do to facilitate that, I think will work out better in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, I was out with Tinny and Kwa for roughly 3 hours, and we covered half the area. I mean, we're talking, we started on Kaufman.
And you just focus on the downtown area, right?
The 4 blocks, and I think we barely made through half of the area. But you're right, they were very happy to see us and talk to us. And so there'll be more to come, but just the most interesting bit that I got from that, just to share with you guys, was, we kept talking about the time limit in the parking in the city lots. And what was interesting that was a lot of restaurants actually wanted longer time. So they were saying that they had patrons that would actually sit there and eat for 3 hours or 4 hours. And they said, yeah, their patrons went out and got a ticket because they were parked there. They were sitting, chatting, and eating for a long time. So that was surprising to me because I was not expecting, this was at least 3 or 4 restaurants that actually brought that up. But that will be brought back to council for discussion. And I just want to, one final thing, we did do a Facebook Live session last Friday as well. We had Scott Reimers talk about the specific plan. Scott was very excited. He wanted makeup, lighting, all the makeup. No, I'm just kidding. He was joking. He was joking.
Told me he was very nervous.
Funny.
Sure he did a great
No,
job.
he did great. He did great.
He's very knowledgeable.
We took over Brian's office because we could for a change of setting, a change of pace, and it was not, the information was stuff that we had already talked about since we've already adopted the plan, so there was nothing new. But it was an opportunity to kind of present that information in a different format and give people who maybe didn't have a chance to tune in to the council discussion or some of the meetings that we had, kind of condensed that down to 20-25 minutes. So I want to thank staff, thank Scott for really participating in that. And that's it for me. We will move on to we will recess to the successor agency. And so I'd like to call the special meeting for the successor agency to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Agency Member Chavez.
Here.
Agency Member Sternquist.
Here.
Agency Member Yu.
Here.
Vice Chair Fish.
Here.
Chairman Mann.
Here. Consent calendar.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, anyone opposed? No? Okay, so the consent calendar has been approved. Move on to 4, public comment. Anyone want to comment? Seeing none. Close public comment. Update from Executive Director and Agency Council.
Very briefly, Mayor, members of the council, the big payment that you just made is our annual bond payment that we make. So that's why you cut the big check from the successor agency today. That's the annual payment we make.
Got it. Thank you. Matters from agency members? None. We will adjourn from the successor agency, return to the regular city council meeting. Additional public comments? Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment at this point?
Yeah.
Public comment. Jared?
Yes, good evening again, Mayor Mann and council members. I have a concern that I've been thinking about for several months now and really don't know who to bring it to, but I thought I would maybe bring it by you. As a business owner, I sit in front of my store and I look out the window and I see people moving. And I'm concerned, you know, we have a diverse community, and I think it may be 55, 60, 65% of our community is Asian. I'm thinking of an Asian lady that lives down the street from my store, does not speak any English and cannot read English, and yet she crosses the street every day on a red light
Oh, man.
because she doesn't know enough to push the button or understand how it works. So I'm looking at the button and it says push button to cross street and it has an arrow. And I'm wondering, is there anything that's pre-made that's bilingual that would help her because she's going to get killed one day? She just doesn't know when to cross and doesn't know how to read.
How long has she been doing this?
A long, long time.
And do you think she knows people who might tell her red, green?
You would think so. In fact, I've actually asked Lucy Liu to speak to her down the street, and I don't think that's ever happened. But today I noticed it again, and she just stands there and doesn't push the button, but yet she gets tired, and then she'll cross against the red light. So I'm not saying that, you know, everybody does this, but we do have an aging community that's possibly Asian that does not read the characters all that well. So I'm just bringing it before your attention because I think if it's an easy fix and they make things that you can paste over it, you know, where the button is, I think it'd be a good thing. Thank you for considering it.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Anyone else who would like to make a comment at this time? All right. Seeing none, then we are adjourned.